What really sold me on it, though, was the lack of noise.
Ooh,
It was just
quiet.
me and the peace and quiet.
That's a problem too, though, because sometimes it can be too quiet. You don't even know what's going on. City life, cabin life, city life right now, but 65 come around. We in the woods. We in the woods. We in the woods with the woods. We in the woods.
For the first time in months, I thought I might actually feel safe. The cabin itself was small but cozy. To be fair, it was exactly what the listing had promised. You could tell it had been built to last, with thick wooden beams and a sturdy stone fireplace.
Ooh,
It smelled like pine and old books when I first walked in. You know, that kind of earthy scent that's almost comforting. Think like one of those old cabin-style bed and
neighbors.
breakfasts, for any of
I
you
got
who have gone
weird
skiing
feeling.
before. The nearest neighbor lived about a 10-minute walk down a narrow dirt path.
It's always the
I didn't
neighbors.
meet her right away, though. For the first few days, I just soaked in the silence. I'd wake up to the sound of birds instead of sirens, and at night, the only thing I
that's
heard was
cool.
the wind brushing through the trees. It was like the whole world had pressed pause, and I could finally breathe again.
Now, vacation wise, yeah, bro, like, go ahead and do that. But living forever? And you young? Nah.
I did all my work from my laptop,
crazy.
so there really was no need for me to connect with the outside world beyond that.
You need some
About a
social
week
life,
after
though.
I moved in, there was a knock at the door.
Your neighbor.
The cabin obviously had no doorbell, so those knocks were something I'd have to get used to. I opened the door, expecting it to be my neighbor, and it was.
Oh,
It was a
okay.
moderately old
was
woman
hoping it
carrying a
would be.
basket of preserves like she just stepped out of a Hallmark movie.
Uh.
She introduced herself as Michelle and
Michelle
told me
sound
she
like
lived about
some-
10 minutes
she
down the
on
trail, which didn't sound far at all until you factored in how dense the woods were. I mean, you could get turned around in there just looking for firewood.
It's
She
crazy.
was in her
You get
late
lost.
60s with oddly long
I'm
gray
saying,
hair,
see? That's what I'm
piercing
saying. You only move to the woods when you're in your 60s. That's it. You're not moving out the city when you young. Me personally, I just wouldn't do it.
eyes that
Move
made
to
you
the woods
feel
when
like
you're
she could
60s.
see right through you. She wasn't rude exactly, more like blunt. She welcomed me to the woods and extended the basket toward me like she was expecting me to take it. I didn't really have much of a choice.
That
She was
basket
practically
had something
shoving
in
it
it.
in my face.
That's crazy.
I know it sounds hospitable, but her vibe seemed a little off, if that makes any sense. I grabbed it impulsively,
Something was
but I
wrong with
admit I had never been
You could just tell something was wrong with Michelle. Something was off. Body language could be the way she spoke, or the eye contact could be weird. Yeah, Michelle don't sound too there, I guess you could say.
treated that way by a neighbor before. It wasn't
yeah, you
anything
live in the
crazy,
city.
but it wasn't something I was used to. I thanked her as I took the basket, and she looked at me like she was expecting me to say something else. I honestly didn't know what else to say, so I just smiled. She kept staring at me awkwardly, which confirmed my suspicion that this
Eye
woman
contact
didn't
is
interact
weird.
with a lot of people. Eventually, she spoke. She said, and these were her exact words, which I'll never forget: "Always keep your lanterns full, your windows shut tight, and your wits sharper than your axe."
See
It
that?
wasn't something a normal person would say to someone else. It was like she was reciting from
And right there, I'm going back to the city. Yeah, Mr. Landlord, this isn't gonna work. I'm going back to the city. Michelle didn't spook me. I'm going back. Just like that. No looking back, no nothing else. I'm just going, I'm out of here.
from a rule
Nothing
book.
else.
It honestly sounded more like a warning than advice. I nodded, smiled, and turned to go back inside. After shutting the door, I stood there in silence, waiting to hear her footsteps walk away. She didn't walk away for a good 45 seconds, which was probably the strangest part about the whole interaction. Despite the weird vibe, I did appreciate her kindness. She seemed reclusive, but not unfriendly. The kind of person who'd help you if you asked, but wouldn't go out of her way to pry. I told myself it was nice to know someone was close by, even if I didn't plan on needing her. I didn't even bother looking in the basket. I just set it down in the living room and forgot about it.
Right?
There was a thunderstorm that night, which is extremely rare for Oregon, but it does happen. I lit a few candles and curled up on the couch with a book, trying to ignore the fact that the power was flickering every few minutes. Some of you might find that kind of isolation scary, but I actually loved it. For some reason, my brain wasn't freaked out by the natural sounds of the thunderstorm. It was actually that specific storm which gave...
Okay. Bro belongs in the position he's in. He said he loved it. The flickering of the lights. He likes the candle vibe, and yeah, he belongs in the scary movie, the scary books. This is his atmosphere. This is his element. He belongs here. Well, how do you love a light flickering and you already getting weird vibes from your neighbor? What she said would have topped it off. I'm out of there. Hey, we can pack up the stuff tomorrow. I would have left it at that. He's crazy too.
Which gave me that realization. I listened intently to everything outside, and it was, dare I say, soothing. But of course, that peaceful feeling didn't last. A few hours after the storm started, there was a knock at the door that nearly made me jump out of my skin.
That's the
police. I say knock, but it was really more of a banging. It was loud and definitely not natural. Like whoever it was didn't care that it was pouring outside.
Nobody was there. Nobody was there. They did. After that knock, they hit the road like Jack. Nobody was there. Watch.
My heart started pounding, and I began to feel that god-awful tingly sensation in my chest. After hesitating for a few seconds, I grabbed a flashlight and got up to check who it was. I looked through the little glass window pane next to the door. It was Michelle, soaked to the bone and clutching a flashlight. I opened the door, and she spoke before I even had a chance to greet her. She blurted out that she saw someone near my woodpile and that I should know about it. I was beyond confused, but her words were incredibly concerning, and that took precedence. I stepped out onto the porch, shining my flashlight into the rain, but I couldn't see anything but trees. I asked her if she was sure, and she nodded. Her eyes kept darting to the woods like she was expecting someone to emerge from it any second. The whole thing was pretty freaky. I kept looking around, but
Michelle is freaky. Why is she coming to my house at this time of night? During a storm. Michelle is the op. That's it. That's the end of it. She's the op. She's the one doing the weird stuff. Knocking at my door like she the police. See, I don't know this guy's race or nothing, but black person is not taking none of that.
But there wasn't much I could make out between the darkness and the chaos of the storm. Before I could say anything else, she told me to be careful and began walking away without waiting for a response. I watched her head back down the path toward her cabin, clearly unfazed by the pouring rain. I stood there until the glow of the flashlight disappeared out of sight, and then I went back inside. The literal second I shut the door, I realized her story was riddled with holes. How could she have seen someone near my woodpile if her house was 10 minutes away? She must have been on my property to begin with. Why the hell would she be snooping around my cabin during a...
Yup. We know who it is. It's Michelle. Why? Bro, I just questioned everything he just said. Why is she out at this time of night if she's an old lady in her 60s? She's doing the weird stuff. She started the thunderstorm.
During a thunderstorm. Was she lying? It didn't sit right with me, but marching over to her house in the middle of a thunderstorm was the last thing I was going to do. Still, I had to do something.
He gonna do that.
I locked up the cabin as securely as I could and sat in my room, listening. The storm started to die down after a while, but I still felt pretty uneasy. A few more hours passed without incident, so I decided that it was probably safe to go to sleep. I can't remember exactly what time it was, but sometime after midnight, I woke up to the sound of a branch snapping just outside my bedroom window. I'm a really light sleeper, so I was 100% positive it was a branch snapping and not something else. I froze in place for a few tense seconds, listening. Eventually, I crept to the window, half hoping I wouldn't see anything. At first, I didn't, but then I spotted her.
I knew it! I knew it!
She was standing at the
Michelle
edge of the
is
woods,
weird!
her body angled away from my house. I could tell it was her because her hair was so long and disheveled. I strained to make out more.
Oh, the excitement of knowing she's weird is so crazy.
Seeing
She's
as
a
there was
weirdo.
only moonlight to help me see, it was no use.
No.
I saw her beginning to turn around, so I ducked beneath the window before she could catch me looking at her. I stayed crouched there for what felt like forever. When I finally mustered the courage to peek again, she was gone. I genuinely didn't know what to do. I hadn't exactly pegged her as dangerous.
From that weird eye contact to now, it's something in the middle that he did not see. He didn't see. And she basically told bro to prepare for all of this. She told bro to prepare for all of this. I would have been like, I would have asked her questions. I'd be like, oh, why? What happens around here? What's going on? Nah.
It's just weird. But at that point, I was having second thoughts. It didn't make sense. Why would she try and warn me earlier if she was the one poking around?
Right.
I didn't sleep for hours. I was pretty dead set on just staying up until sunrise. A few hours passed, and I was starting to get tired. As I finally began letting my guard down, there was a knock at the door.
Alright, it's not as bad as
It
the one
wasn't like the
last
banging
time.
from earlier.
Right.
It was actually kind of quiet.
Right?
Still, I wasn't going to get up under any circumstances. The pins and needles started up again as I quietly made my way over to the door. I took an inconspicuous glance through the pane and froze in horror. It wasn't Michelle. It was a burly-looking bald guy with a thick beard.
Oh, it's a new dude.
I had to fight every bone in my body not to yell out in fear. The situation instantly went from a 6 to a 10.
Yeah.
As quietly as I could, I retreated to my bathroom, locked the door, and called the police. As I was on the
Why
phone
are you
with them,
here at that
I
time?
started to hear banging on the front door, like someone was repeatedly smashing it with a heavy object.
Oh.
The operator told me help was on the way and instructed me not to hang up. I sat there more terrified than I'd ever been in my entire life. Eventually, the front door gave way, and I heard it crash.
Michelle's husband. Michelle's husband. Yeah. Most definitely Michelle's husband. Most
Open.
definitely.
I
Damn.
genuinely thought I was going to die. That man, whoever he was, started smashing things in my cabin. At least that's what it sounded like.
He's trying to get you out of
All
there.
I could hear was the sound of glass breaking and wood splintering. I didn't dare make a sound. Luckily, that man didn't seem to look for me, because I never heard his footsteps leave the living room. Eventually, the smashing sound stopped, and I was sitting in complete silence again. I had been fighting off a panic attack the whole time. To my surprise, the police actually arrived pretty quickly, but
Oh,
not
wow.
soon enough to catch that guy in the act. He was long gone. I pleaded with the officers to help me out, but they were downright useless. They did a pathetic search of the surrounding property, but that was it.
Oh, that's
They wouldn't
crazy.
even agree to search the woods, saying that it was too dense and they were unlikely.
In Oregon? The police failed him in Oregon? Now, okay, the police showing up late in LA, that's, yeah. But in Oregon? Wow, that's sketchy.
Unlikely to
Stretchy.
find him there anyway.
They used to this.
Begged them to accompany me to Michelle's house at least, which they agreed to. When we got to her property, my jaw literally dropped.
Oh.
The entire cabin was abandoned. The cops confirmed this and said no one had lived there in decades.
That's her
Told me they had to
husband!
search it for squatters, but they told me there was no reason for them to do that. They tried to tell me that there was no clear signs of habitation.
Michelle and her husband was really trying to get bro. She welcomed them in with the basket, ha 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 ha, and then she tried to warn him about her husband. I got money on it. Michelle and her
It
husband.
would be a waste of time. I damn near lost my mind when I heard them say that. I tried to argue, but they more or less told me that living in the woods was a risk I was taking and was not their problem.
Ooh.
They left after that, which infuriated me. I obviously moved out of that cabin, but not before spending one more night there.
Damn.
It was awful.
Shuddy.
I made it through without anything happening. Things have been good for me since then, but I still constantly think about this experience. Some of my superstitious friends have theorized that Michelle was actually a spirit that was trying to protect me,
Whoa.
and that she was really just trying to watch over my property for whatever reason. I don't believe in the paranormal, so I think it's much more likely that two people Her and that man had been squatting in that abandoned cabin.
Her and her husband.
I just still don't understand why they
Watching
decided to target me, or why Michelle would bother to warn me if she were planning on breaking into my house.
They was just trying to get him out of their turf. That's it. Let's get this man out of here. This is gonna work. Let's go bang on the door, you know what I'm saying? Welcome him with treats and stuff, goodies, and then let's terrorize his property later. And break in. Yeah, we know he's in there, but hey, that's crazy.
I don't think I'll ever know.
Nah, you ain't. You ain't never gonna know. Alright, y'all, that's the end of that video. We're gonna catch y'all on the next scary story. Chat.